Hey, welcome to the Dodger Dave channel. I'm on the road. This is going to be a little more like a podcast. Start off like this, and then, for data preservation purposes, so I won't have a disaster trying to edit later. I'm just gonna put up a screenshot or two, three maybe. That's why this is disappearing, because I'm in Mobizen and not really using the camera. I'm using Mobizen with the camera app on for just a minute to say, hey, so what are we going to talk about? I want you to keep an open mind when you're entering the Dodger Dave zone. So this is like entering the Twilight Zone for some people, maybe for a lot of people. And I'm going to challenge people to have an open mind and consider the things that I have to say, rather than react according to the way you've been conditioned and programmed to say, oh, well, he said something that doesn't go along with my programming, with my conditioning, with what I believe the world is supposed to be, my worldview. If I don't agree with it, then it's just, that's what Mormons have been programmed to do. They're not the only ones, and it's not just within churches. You're programmed through the media constantly to do this, to say, oh, that's crazy shit. That's crazy shit. Well, of course it sounds like crazy shit, because it's off the charts, different from what you've been programmed with for a very long time and very effectively. But see if I make some sense here. So I'm going to talk about how the LDS Church is a cog in a much larger wheel, where certain classes of people, the elites, who govern this world in a way that most people are taught to believe is just complete fantasy, use mind control, group mind control, on a large scale in multiple venues. And I'm going to talk about this as I'm rambling down the road from Denver to San Diego. It's a long drive. Don't worry, this won't be a 17-hour video. But well, that's for sure, because I'm almost halfway there. Come on. I think I am halfway there. A lot of driving. So the LDS Church is an important mechanism, is an important part of shaping our worldview, or at least of the Latter-day Saints. But it's an important, all of these religions are important in shaping the worldview of the people, so that you believe that reality is what you are told on television and at school and at church. Even though those things can be different, none of them are what are what I'm going to tell you things really are. And I believe I can present things pretty logically. So there may be uncomfortable pauses at times. I'm driving. I got to be safe. I'm not George Carlin. I can't memorize all this shit because I haven't been MK'd. And if you think that sounds a little wild, we'll get into that. We'll discuss what that is and how these people that are that good at what they do with these stand-up routines that memorize stuff like that, they're that good for reasons. And being MK'd is one of them. Being able to access like photographic memory much more easily than most people can, or much more effectively. So here we go. I'm just going to throw up a screenshot, and I'm going to get on the road and make like Led Zepp, my favorites, and just and ramble on. So you'll get some really good information here. There may be some pauses, there may be some imperfections in delivery, all that kind of stuff. But if you persevere, it may change your worldview completely, or be the beginning of doing so, because what you've been told is just crazy stuff. Ain't so crazy when you do the research. All right, let's go to the screenshot. And yeah, and so I'll try to rotate these just a little bit. I'm gonna actually have to move this thing because it's in the way in the center. So I'll just move it over, but you won't make any difference to you because you're not looking at me anymore. Although I will be back, and I've already recorded what you will see at the end when I come back and tell you a little bit about what happened on Facebook. Once again, if you're watching this, Mom, you probably shouldn't be. At least not the whole thing. Okay, and it might get a little wild. And definitely the end. Okay, alrighty. I need some AC going on here. Probably not much because it interferes with the noise level. Let's get going. So, give you a little preview of some of these screenshots. I love this one here. My Stairway to Heaven thing I did. Restoring the Stairway to Heaven. It's on the, well, yeah. That's the beginning of one of my web pages on Mormon Truth videos, gospel topic stuff. Yeah, I got the window open for just a minute. It's getting hot in this car. I mean, the other day, yesterday it was like, it's 23 degrees, but it feels like it's 8. Because some dude ran out in a Speedo in the snow, and they just pay some dude to say, it feels like, and depending on what he's wearing, or she, that's how far... That represents the disparity between the actual temperature and what it feels like. Or it could have something to do with humidity and shit like that. I don't know. Yay. Alright. Cool shit. Wanna go with this one? Yeah, it was just somebody's profile page. I'm the flower child. Hey Lois, you can't control dick. Look at me. I'm hanging out in the morning glories. Doing acid. Just kidding. What do we have there? Is it a 666 or a 3313 or an 888? Like my 888 subscribers the other day. All right. Okay. What are we going to go with? Boom. There we go. Of course, we could go with a Monarch one. Nah, I'll just use that on the front of it. Okay. We're going with this for now. I'm going to get on the road. All right, so this this presentation. Well, presentations are usually something that are presented after having gone over it, and so what I'm doing here is going to be closer to what sometimes people call it's rambling. Processes of thoughts flowing, a stream of consciousness. So this is really going to be for people who are truth seekers, because if you want to have some information that can drastically affect your worldview and give you food for thought from a perspective of someone who has taken a lot of time and effort to examine the reality that we've been presented with, question it, and notice that there's a plethora of evidence to the effect that everything is what it isn't. To use words that may have been coined by David Icke, who I believe says a lot of things that are true and some things that are not, because I believe he has been reined in. And that's what they do. Or you die. Or lose everything and get, made to look like you're out of your mind. So your credibility is attacked, which is what you see with apologists from Freemason-controlled organizations like Mormonism, Scientology, all of these types of Christianity. We have Christians, Billy Graham, Oral Roberts, Robert Schuller, Pat Robertson, Benny Hinn. Check and see who's Ken Copeland. Find out who are occultists. Joel Osteen, who may be associated with various fraternal organizations, including Freemasonry, but not limited to Freemasonry. And what you find is that in all aspects of society, the people that rise to the top, whether it's presidents or astronauts or leaders of religions, or often CEOs, major corporations, including banking, finance, military, industrial, complex technology, they have these ties, these links to the occult, to fraternal organizations which are secretive and have binding oaths similar to those that we found, especially with the demonic Masonic penalties were attached to the covenants of the law of sacrifice, the law of chastity, the law of the gospel, and the law of consecration in the LDS temple endowment, the very changing and evolving temple endowment from the unchanging God who, I believe Joseph Smith indicated, revealed it in the endowment in its purity to him, even though he copied various aspects from the Luciferian Freemasons that he joined when he joined that Luciferian religion of Freemasonry, as you will find it described as by high-ranking, the highest ranking Freemason in the Americas at the time of his writing Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Rite of Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. I'm talking about Confederate General and Attorney Albert Pike. As Grand Poobah, to use Fred Flintstone language, whatever, the Supreme Council, whatever, of North America, of all the Americas, of the Southern jurisdiction, whatever title he had at the time. And he wrote what we, for short, just call Morals and Dogma, and discussed it being a religion and that they follow the god Lucifer, a dualistic god, or in other words, a god in a yin-yang dualistic situation. Lucifer, the god of light and good, according to Albert Pike. That's what we find, that's what's being taught. Versus the evil Hebrew god, Adonai, meaning my Lord in Hebrew, referring to Yahweh, or whom Mormons actually decide that's Jesus Christ in his premortal state, who's talking as if he was God the Father. So they call Jesus Jehovah, which is completely anachronistic in the pre-existence, if it ever occurred, or any time before that name was invented by Raymond Martini, the Catholic monk and occultist, in 1257 A.D., although it was Yahuwah, I believe, at that point in English, since the J and the V had not yet been invented. But Joseph Smith, not knowing this, put it in the Book of Abraham, and we've got that in the endowment, which is ridiculous. It's just a combination of certain portions of Adonai and Elohim, which were titles. I've said that time and again. And so that was supposed to be Jesus. Anyway, the more we look at Mormonism, the easier it is to say, how could I ever believe this? But we were in possession of so many of the facts that we now are. Or I wasn't, and many of my listeners, many people who are no longer active in the LDS Church were believing, because they have access to information, which is, of course, much more readily available, easily obtainable due to the internet, and then people like me that have done a lot of study within Mormonism and other venues relating to our reality. In other words, who controls the world and why. So why do we have this, and why do we have these churches that serve to mind control people into some of these ridiculous beliefs and these in these religions that are so demanding and have teachings that, in the case of Mormonism, destroy so many lives, destroy people's self-worth, self-image, etc., with the purity doctrines that they teach, which help cause that great status that we have for Utah in what they lead the nation, not only in pornography subscriptions per capita in like Utah County at least, but in the fact that the number one cause of death for children ages 11 to 17. All right, 17-year-olds, don't get upset that I lumped you in as children. Young adults, this age group, the number one cause of death isn't surfing accidents. It's not drowning in a pool. It's not getting run over by a car. It's not getting bit by a coyote. No, it's suicide. It's suicide because people don't feel good about themselves if they've been taught this purity doctrine and then they have a normal experience of development as they become adults. The financial stress of Mormonism is intense. The misogyny that has been exercised upon women in all these Abrahamic cults has caused so much depression that women in Utah, especially Mormons, but when you just look at the statistics for the state, the antidepressant use, especially by women, is crazy. The overdoses are crazy. Happy Valley, have you seen that? So, bankruptcy, foreclosure, divorce, depression, suicide. These are the fruits of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, as proven statistically in Utah and other states, high in Mormonism compared to other states. We find these indicators of ruining your life are extremely noticeable. The numbers, numbers don't lie. People lie. People can manipulate books like an Enron Corporation and whatnot, but oh my God, did I just say whatnot? I passed through Utah, maybe that's, but not today. All right. The fruits of Mormonism are not good. When they tell you, oh, the fruits of the gospel are just great, we teach, we're all about families, but Mormonism destroys families. It destroys families through stress and through terrible teachings, through financially enslaving people and enslaving people through temple covenants, especially using the family, holding the family hostage, so that people will obey these men that are paraded in front of them as agents of an invisible God who with this alleged agency are to instruct us in the ways of life and salvation, as Adam said in the endowment, the presentation of the endowment, right? So the focus of this is, excuse me, the yogurt you're going to see me eat later must have been swallowed with a little air. So the larger world picture and how Mormonism fits into that is what I really wanted to try to focus on. But I want to demonstrate that this indentured servitude to the plantations that we live on and in, as well as organizations such as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Church of Scientology, or the Seventh-day Adventists, or the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, better known as the Jehovah's Witnesses organization, underneath, basically it's like a parent corporation or something, to be a watchtower, right? The members, as they are euphemistically called, in other words, the dupes in these religions, are sold a bill of goods, which is basically, you are going to live happily ever after in a future life if you just do whatever your leaders tell you that the invisible God wants you to do. And they will manage the finances of these organizations. And they will be inspired by this God or these gods to direct you in the ways of life and salvation, or in other words, the path to gain eternal life, so you won't be dead forever when you die. And in Mormonism, that includes living happily ever after with those who are members of your family that have also complied with Mormonism's strict behavioral control guidelines, which are, of course, presented as divinely given commandments or requirements for our behavior, such as I mentioned or introduced just briefly regarding what people covenant to in the temple, where they are being told that because you go to the temple and make what are called sacred covenants. Sacred just refers to sacerdocio. You know, if you learn a little bit about the Latin, I was exposed. I took Latin, but I was exposed to Latin-based language through Spanish as well. Of course, some of it's English, but it's sacerdocia. So this is the priest class, and so I could get into the power of language, and I probably will. But remember, I'm not reading this stuff. This is a stream of consciousness. So when we talk about these so-called sacred covenants being made in the temple, along with the sacred secrets, they're called sacred secrets, so that people won't be breaking the Masonic oaths of secrecy with regard to the signs and tokens of Freemasonry. That's why we have these secrets that they just said were sacred. Meaning, you don't want to cast your pearl before swine. In fact, you were taking oaths not to reveal them, at least in conjunction with one another, since you do reveal, like the first oath of the Aaronic priesthood whenever you baptize someone, for instance, right? But you don't give it along with, you don't give the sign. That's the sign of the first oath. The give the token, which is a particular handshake. The Freemasonic handshake for the Blue Lodge, I think it's with the Andrew Prentice, that was the Philip Craft and the Master Mason, the line, whatever. Anyway, what's given over the grip that is given over the altar and the final grip that you get before going through the veil at the end of the LDS endowment is associated with Freemasonry in the third degree, or sublime degree, the degree of Master Mason. From this Luciferian religion, we have these signs and tokens which Brigham Young, and penalties which were gruesome, ripping out your tongue, slitting your throat, disembowelling, ripping out your heart, all these sorts of things. But the Blue Lodge apparently gave up in 1986, and then we followed suit 4 years later in 1990 LDS endowment, along with some other items, which people, particularly when they voiced comfortable with, like the 5 minutes of fellowship, which which involved too much physical contact, especially if a guy was being overstepping what he should be doing just so he could have some sort of pleasure touching a woman in an uninvited way. Does it sound like Donald Trump? Yeah, so that had to do with the legend of Hiram and Biff. And I've mentioned before, I was in the temple long after these had been taken out, and I was familiar with them because I'd taken out my endowments while these things were in. And a voice spoke to me during the endowment and said, Google the 5 points of fellowship. This was part of my wake-up process. So when I got home, I did Google it, and it had nothing to, it didn't mention Mormonism at all. It mentioned the legend of Hiram and Biff. That's Freemasonry. That was one of those things that began to open my eyes regarding the problematic issue of Joseph Smith supposedly being inspired or having the endowment revealed to him, but instead joining this Luciferian religion associated with the Illuminati, where their god is proclaimed to be Lucifer, the god that they adore and choose. Yet Joseph Smith, as a Freemason, presents in the LDS endowment Lucifer to be Satan, which is not what's presented, at least to the levels of Freemasonry where I've been able to read it with a Brotherhood 33rd degree might have in the secret books of the Masonic temples might be different from what Albert Pike put in Morals and Dogma, which was being given out to brethren, yes, brethren, of the 19th degree and up, I believe, for 100 years. The Freemasonic apologists will do all they can to distance themselves from that, just as the word being distanced in the minds of people as much as he could the LDS Church from polygamy or the racism regarding the priesthood ban or the ban for Negroes of African descent, direct African descent, to participate or enter the temple, since it was, of course, deemed to be a wonderful blessing. But when I say that, I say it knowing that it's actually the opposite of a blessing, because the whole thing is just a mind control game. It is a manipulation tool so that people, like I said, have their hostages, their heartstrings held hostage by the LDS Church. So if you obey, you're told you will have your family together with you forever, or at least those who obey. And then you hear these little anecdotes like, oh, well, your stray children, the Lord will make sure you can, gather them in or something, or you can go visit them in the celestial kingdom or whatever, right? So, if you don't obey, of course, you lose your family. And you don't just lose them in eternity, you lose them in this life many times also. As in great measure, I have. So that's one of my big beefs with the church, because it's like a lot of evil things are. They do the opposite of what they say they are doing. So they're destroying families, putting tremendous pressure on people, and then, shunning people who find out that they were lying, encouraging others to shun them because they don't want them to learn what you learned when you find out you've been lied to. Although that has now been softened in the temple recommend questioning process by downgrading that particular question to a point of stating, of asking if you yourself participate in activities opposed to the LDS Church, or language to that effect. as opposed to do you, support in any way or associate with anyone who does do that. So, is Jesus changing his mind, people? The all-knowing, unchanging God or Son of God? Yeah. Or do we have these guys morphing the church according to a plan, and also according to the pressures that are being applied through the exodus of so many members and the waking up process of all but the most ignorant or heavily programmed members of the church, which I wanted to mention that too, because this was just about Russell Nelson saying, oh, it's a victory for Satan if you say, I'm a Mormon now, rather than I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, when previous leaders of the church, deemed as prophets, seers, and revelators the oracle of God, or the equivalent of the Pope in the minds of the people who are the parishioners of the LDS Church, had said, go ahead, say I'm Mormon, but if it's a victory for Satan now, like I said in the last video, then it was a victory for Satan then. And we notice that perhaps the brethren are trying to rein in some of the things that Russell Nelson has said, such as that, because I believe I've read, excerpts out of like the Bishop's Handbook or something like that, that make the use of the term Mormon not a victory for Satan. In other words, it says something like it's preferable to use the full name of the church, at least use the name Jesus Christ if you can, because they want to really get it, they market it in the minds of people. They're all about this Jesus Christ character invented by the Roman Flaky family in those four Gospels that the Catholic Church adopted, or from their own progenitors, their own dynasty, seeking to assimilate the Jews and to soften the Messianic revolution cult of the Jews, who've been programmed into thinking they're better than everyone else, which is what religion does. You're special, you're better because you obey this. You do what you're told, so you are better, you're going to heaven, and they're going to hell. That's, or they're infidels, so you can just enslave them, kill them, whatever, right? I mean, the Muslims just, not all the Muslims, but that's doctrine consistent with the Quran from what I have read, and I have not read much of the Quran, but I have read some excerpts from it, which are pretty heinous. And again, the Old Testament's pretty heinous. And in the New Testament, the Jesus character endorses the Old Testament God, his Father. Somehow Mormons just say he's pretending that he's just speaking in as if he was in the first person, as if he was that. So anyway, why do we have these religions? Now, I don't know how far time actually goes back. According to Isaac Newton, whom we get some of the direction towards what we were taught about our worldview should be, like the myth of gravity, called the law of gravity. Some of you are going, what did you say? Are you out of your mind? Gravity's a fact. Is it? I'm not going to get into that right now, because something falls to the earth doesn't necessarily mean it's because of how Newton explained it. But anyway, we take what Newton said as, okay, this is scientific fact when we're talking about gravity, right? Well, what about other shit that Newton said? Did you know he was a sorcerer? He wrote as much about religion and alchemy as he did about some of these other things. But they leave out those portions that that don't fit within what they want to present in the worldview that they, meaning the elite, want us to have. Isaac Newton said that that hundreds of years, I think at least 500 years of what we have as supposed history is just bullshit. It was just made up to serve the purposes of the empire, the ruling empire, which really is the Roman Empire, from what I can ascertain. London is not independent. Washington, D.C. is not independent. Sure, these three city-states, these three individual corporate countries, the Vatican, the financial district of London, or the city, as it is called, and Washington, D.C., in other words, the District of Columbia. You have to ask yourself, who was Columbia? If you explain Columbia, Queen of Heaven, ISIS, somewhere else. These occultists that are governing our world are steeped in knowledge that is hidden from you. That's why it is called occults. It comes from the Latin term that I know best in Spanish, occulto. In other words, esoteric knowledge instead of exoteric presentation, but it's presented as exoteric knowledge. Made up knowledge, maybe just programmed. So Isaac Newton gave us the theory of gravity, which we call the law of gravity, because those who have the power decided it's fact. Just like the church, they act like the flood of Noah, a worldwide flood that killed everyone except for 8 people, is fact. But the Church Dictionary, Bible Dictionary, LDS.org, which is now like the Church of Jesus Christ.org, because maybe LDS.org was almost a victory for Satan, right? So in this whole rebranding the church all about Jesus Christ, it doesn't even say the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.org. No, it's just the Church of Jesus Christ, right? This isn't an accident. Anyway, in that Bible dictionary, if you look up Egypt, you will see a history of Egypt, which is sparse and brief somewhat. In other words, they try not to put in too much detail because they don't want you to think too hard and notice that it's contradicting the Noah and the giant worldwide flood thing. Because Egypt was unaffected by this flood. We've got history going right through it. The church is even, going through from 3000 BC to 1800, just kind of jumping through there as quickly as they can, getting to the 18th dynasty there, which happened to be about 1800 BC for some reason. They were washed away in 2344 BC. Neither were the Chinese, neither were the Sumerians, neither were the Babylonians, and neither were the American Indians. Petrified wood, Geronimo, moccasins for the entire family, Geronimo. Yeah, I'm passing these signs. They keep talking, made by Indians. Made by Indians. These signs are made by Indians, advertising products made by Indians who are calling themselves Indians. American Indians, Indians. They're calling themselves Indians. But that's not politically correct. That's because the politically correct term didn't come from them. They didn't start this shit. Negroes didn't start calling themselves African Americans. This stuff comes down from the channels ordained by the Lucis Trust. For reasons having to do in line with the manipulation of our thoughts. So it's bad because they call you a Native American instead of American Indian. I'm just saying, it doesn't look like the Indians. People I call the Indians, and then people now only are politically correct to call. They're programmed to think, oh my God, what are you, racist? You call them Indians. That's what they're calling themselves. What do Negroes call themselves? If I say so on Facebook, I'll probably have my channel shut down or something. My it's not a channel, whatever the hell they call it, right? If I say it on YouTube, I'll have my channel shut down. What Negroes call themselves. I was working with black girls and some black guys. Most of the girls. Hey, 35% of the women are not doing time for violent crime, serious crime. And when I mean time, I'm talking about prison time, not jail time. Check your statistics, that's pretty much what it is for black males. And it's not just because of what libtards will tell you, that it's all just a bunch of racist cops. There are racist cops, but cops have treated me badly too. There's just a lot of problem from that sector in certain communities, and I've experienced it because I lived in East LA County. It's not like you libtards out of Salt Lake City. Not all of you are libtards, but people have lived a sheltered and different experience with regard to those people that are now called African Americans, so much that anybody from African descent or of the Negroid race. Oh my God, is that a racist term? It's a race. It's called Negroid. We've got races: Negroid, Mongoloid, and Caucasian. Those are actually races. But we get programmed into thinking, oh no, you're a racist unless you say what you're being programmed through channels that I've discussed. I'm not talking about YouTube channels, although they are part of it. I'm talking about channels, venues for which information and programming are disseminated in school systems, in media, and in religion. In other words, our viewpoint of our world is being formed deliberately by individuals, by groups, for specific reasons. And not all of it's good, because these people at the top are willing to spill your blood and do so. They're not just willing to. It's part and parcel. It is a practice. It is part and parcel of the program of domination of this world. And so if you've been programmed, like most people have, to think, that's insane. That's all conspiracy theory. These are all terms that have power because they are in our language and in our culture with certain definitions which we have been conditioned to react to for reasons. If you investigate the Tavistock Institute for Human Behavior at Stanford Institute, if you take the time to learn some of the things that I have learned, you find out this isn't accidental. Why we think what we think is because it's been planned that way and it's executed that way. The world is so much different than we have been conditioned to believe that it is. So, those of us who have exited Mormonism, for instance, have asked ourselves, how did I ever believe that stuff about Joseph Smith? This first vision and everything that the prophet says comes from an all-knowing and changing God, and we just need to obey it, that we can live happily ever after, have our own planet and galaxy, and, should I get into the numbers? Create a new spirit child through celestial sex every 3 3/4 seconds to keep up with just this world? Too bad there's so many other worlds. I don't think I could really enjoy a free, it's just too short. 30 minutes for pigs is a little long, 3 3/4 seconds, and then having no break in between. No wonder God doesn't have time to answer your prayers, right? What about all the other worlds? Bottom line is the math doesn't work on anything. When you get into Mormon theology, Mormon cosmology, it's insane. So if you think too hard, you figure out you've been hoodwinked. But you've been hoodwinked for a reason. And so I'm going to do more than suggest. I'm going to suggest to your minds that the research that some of us have done in our lives, and I'm not saying all mine was organic by any means, but it's still research, it's study, to see how our world works and why, and it's not how they tell you in school. And many things that they tell you are good for you are not good for you. They are harmful to you, but they are profitable for pharmaceutical companies. They're profitable for doctors and hospitals and investors. Investors can be cities, states, counties, because these municipal corporations are privately owned. They have plantations. If you investigate that, then my videos, I just borrow some stuff from a very masterful video I'm about to name now. I made that video, 3 hours and 13 minutes, some of your best spent time ever possibly. It's called Corporation Nation. Corporation Nation. And I used excerpts of that in some of the videos that I've done, a couple of them especially, or one series, 3, that was about the subject that I'm talking about now, but I spent loads of time fading in evidentiary pictures and so forth, and subject matter that integrates how our world is governed by elitists who are Luciferians and control these churches and the governments, which are privately owned. Privately owned churches whose shareholders we know not, at least in Mormonism. Who owns the LDS church? That's a good question. I think Union Bank owns the stock. I think that there's some Rothschild related investments. But Kuhn and Loeb, Brigham Young, we're told, has not only ties to Kuhn and Loeb, but was meeting with the Jesuit, what's his name, Pierre, or what the hell, same guy that Albert Pike was meeting with. He was head of Freemasonry at the time. What was Mormonism really developed for? It was developed for people control. That's what it was developed for, at least under Brigham Young. And I don't believe that Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon any more than I believe that he translated it from a rock in a hat or by some other form of mediumship. He may have participated in a team effort. There appear to be various authors involved that had occult knowledge, and they were using 19th century Christian arguments, conversation, and anachronistically quoting or nearly quoting various New Testament conversation versus thoughts in allegedly Old Testament timelines. Yeah, so I use a lot of opportunities to share the fraud, the evidence of fraud in Mormonism during this. So my worldview involves what you are programmed to believe, or is conspiracy theory that is only believed, of course, by people who are paranoid schizophrenics and connect the dots because they're paranoid. Actually, the dots do connect, and people are scared off by mind control and by conditioning like this to not look into things deep enough to see that the dots do connect, and that much of what we have been told is simply not true regarding our world. And so these religions, I'm going to state, in large part, from, for all the big ones, are there to augment the control of the elitists, those who actually own the banks, the cities, go through trusts and corporations, so you won't even see who this is. You can say, oh, so many people invest. Yes, lots of people invest in basically just the stock market. But who invests in corporations like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Who invests? Who carries the largest investments for with block voting? If you look at the close to 200,000 municipal corporations in the United States, do they not hold like majority shares collectively in most of the Fortune 500 companies? I don't want to use the word worldwide. worldwide, the investment collectively by these municipal corporations, cities, states, counties, pension funds, etc., in the United States, which is a company formerly known as the Virginia Company, invested in by the royal family of Britain and other wealthy associates of the monarchy at that time. It's a privately held municipal corporation. The Federal Reserve Bank is, or banks, it's the Federal Reserve banking system. It's a privately owned entity invested in by various banks. Some of them, many of them were European investors. In 1913, the banks are, we have Schroeder Bank, Hanover Bank, City National Bank. If you do some research, and you will find out that there's, nothing federal about it. It wasn't how many reserves that means that's just a closed term. Ron Paul, many people, including myself at the time, thought, okay, he's an honest man that he really wants to have limited government and represent the people. But it appears to me that when he was saying, "Oh, let's audit the Fed," he knew that they had essentially the equivalent of comprehensive annual financial report, but he didn't mention that. And these cities and states, counties, and so forth have comprehensive annual financial reports which reveal their international investment in stock all over the world, which you receive no benefit from. It's a tax in, tax out portion shown to you without the comprehensive financial report showing these massive assets of these privately owned municipal corporations that we call your government, thought was of the people, by the people, and for the people. It was not. And the representatives are officers who serve that corporation. Use your responsibilities to the corporation. It's bottom line, not to you. Not to you. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is, as Jeff Benson would have called, he used the term conspiracy fact. Except for he talked about comprehensive annual financial reports. He only shared that portion of this, when he was talking about secret combinations and so forth, that goes that is in line with the manifest destiny doctrine taught in the Book of Mormon and in Mormonism at large. That the Israelite God kept the Americas, or the area where the United States of America, out of whatever he did. He out of the hands of tyrants, and created the United States government, the constitutional government, by inspiring wise, good men, so that we would have the system of checks and balances and so forth that we're touted and we're taught about, and we're told how to represent us fairly, so that the gospel of Jesus Christ could be restored upon the earth in preparation for the return of the Son of Man. So Bruce Norman would have did say it. That guy, you think I'm long-winded? You got to read some of Bruce McConkey's shit. Seriously, like Millennial Messiah, suicide. The guy goes on and on and on and on. I had to quit during Millennial Messiah. I read Mortal Messiah. I read Mormon Doctrine. I read all three Gospel, New Testament commentaries, doctrinal New Testament commentaries, going verse by verse through the entire New Testament. with Bruce telling you what it all means. Yeah, because I ran the church bookstore, so I owned a number of books, which some of them, well, almost none of them, I think my oldest son has after shit hit the fan for me. So yeah, I was able to buy at a discount by wholesale when I ran the bookstore. I decided to do that, and I ordered all sorts of things that I thought were of interest, and then expanded the bookstore collection and sold a lot more books probably than anybody else had. I magnified my calling, and I gained a lot of knowledge myself regarding Mormonism there. And like I've said before, I was employed by the LDS Church, taking care of building the grounds of a particular chapel, so that I was doing, what misogynists would call women's work. Some of that, not maintenance, painting, but vacuuming, mopping, dusting, super boring shit. So that if you want to use your time wisely, you can put you've got a cassette. Yes, I said cassette. I'm not 29 after all. Okay, I'm not 49 after all. I got a cassette player, recorder player that I can put on my belt, and something like an earbud back in the day, and listened to all kinds of stuff that was in the church library, in the ward library, wards, the meeting house library, because it was for 3 wards. So we had all the scriptures, we had all kinds of BYU devotionals by these general authorities, and we had general conference for year after year after year. So, I inundated my mind with Mormonism, which has been a good preparation between that and the bookstore and all this stuff, which was, of course, just something I did to serve the church, make money for the elders quorum so they could party or whatever the hell it was. But it worked for me in gaining a lot of knowledge about Mormonism that most of us just don't do. But if you're doing some kind of mindless job and you have access to unlimited amounts of audio material you can listen to while you're buffing floors and other mindless shit like that, you can assimilate a lot of information. And I was assimilating information about Mormonism. Besides that, I was studying how the world is run. I was involved in the John Birch Society, but I found that they came up short, like Ezra Taft Benson did. They only sponsored that portion which supported the Manifest Destiny doctrine that the Americas were preserved by the God of Israel as part of his great divine plan to usher in the millennium. A bastion of freedom, for out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And when we really read that scripture and look at what it says there in the Bible, they're just doing the normal thing like they do with a chiasmus or something, being repetitive. Zion doesn't mean Jackson County, Missouri in the Bible. It's taken kind of out of context, twisted in the minds of Mormons to believe they're talking about Jackson County, Missouri. That's just the way that they write that kind of stuff. It's like saying, what is this bleating of sheep I hear, etc. It is better to obey than to sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. Hearken means listen and obey, and the fat of rams is referring to sacrifices. So in other words, there's just another example of Hebrew scripture just doubling up, saying the same thing twice with different words. And that's what's being said when it says, out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord of Jerusalem. But in Mormonism, you're taught, okay, well, Jerusalem will be the religious capital of the world. The political capital of the world in the millennium will be Jackson County, Missouri. And who's ready for that? Well, the Community of Christ, formerly known as the Reformed Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was probably the most ready for that if it was going to happen, because they've got the big temple there, right? And I did a tour of that temple, with their guide, who's probably a Freemason, and Dodger Bureau, and kind of had it to ourselves. But it's pretty interesting. So, when people say that we are sheep, are they nuts? Or do we actually have control mechanisms where we are conditioned to believe that our language has been altered, meanings that are given to us through these systems, through educational systems, which we call them, they're indoctrination systems, actually, which give some education, to cause us to have a certain worldview. And I'm suggesting that that worldview that we have is not at all accurate. This is a Twilight Zone sort of thing. And the LDS Church is involved in certain aspects of programming and participation of data gathering and so forth, and in recruitment for privately owned agencies that are involved with drug trafficking, heavily the CIA. All right? Recruitment for the CIA, FBI, and the NSA, National Spy Association, could be another possible interpretation of that acronym instead of National Security Agency. Recruitment occurs at BYU pretty heavily, what I'm told. And we have Council on Foreign Relations members like Dick Cheney or Elder Brent Scowcroft addressing LDS graduating classes, talking about the New World Order, as Brent Scowcroft mentioned 5 or 6 times in his address to that graduating class. He's been a national security advisor to 5 presidents, business partner of Henry Kissinger, one of the most evil individuals on the earth, the most connected man as far as NGOs go, possibly in the world, according to what is ISGS. Would be Henry Kissinger, like number 11 or so would be Brent Scowcroft. And about 5 or 6 times he referred to the New World Order and was encouraging LDS, students at BYU, the graduating class, Mormon kids, that they needed to participate in helping form the New World Order in such a way that it would benefit America and the LDS Church. And I put portions of that for brevity, because I was already in a video series that lasted like 3 hours, right? On this subject matter, corporate governance, elimination, etc. General comments. I wish I could have the name of this 3-part video series. But at any rate, Scowcroft being introduced, that keeps showing Monson in there and so forth, basically an E, but whatever. And this guy is a member of various groups that are, that are treasonous when it comes to America being supposedly a sovereign nation. That concept and the whole manifest destiny thing, organizations like the CFR, the Council of Foreign Relations, whose stated goals involves basically submerging the United States country into being in a subservient or just participatory role in a world government, or just as a nation state, framework like the United Nations. I also showed George H.W. Bush, George Bush, Obama, David Rockefeller, and others stating pretty much the same thing in various speeches openly in public, Bill Clinton too. So, why would an LDS elder be a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, and whose goals are to basically subvert American sovereignty, to like I said, submerge America into a world government. And so Brett Scowcroft was just basically trying to say, we want America to be special in this new world order. He said, it's not if the new world order will come, it's when. This is at BYU, people. So presumably, if these were honest men, Ezra Taft Benson, J. Reuben Clark, etc., these guys would be turning in their graves hearing this kind of stuff, right? Of course they would if they were truly honest men. I believe they were all occultists, actually, or they were brought in line through coercion, reward, the stick, and the carrot, just like you have been with your temple covenants, held hostage. Not everybody that makes it high up in the LDS church comes from a generational satanic family. However, once you're in that deep and you've got that much at stake, it may be a lot like mom. It's difficult to get out. Yeah, the price would be very high. So, I'm suggesting that, like I mentioned in that comment to Tom Miller's post in Apostates of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or maybe he didn't put it in Apostates, maybe he just put that up on his own thing. I think it's really good, actually. So, my dad's saying that, I think. But he did that quote from George Orwell, who was famous for writing 1984, which is about basically the institution of globalism in a totalitarian world government, supranational, superstructured government like the United Nations. Except for he puts that as coming into fruition in the year 1984. So when I commented, I talked about our nice global NWO village there. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people being in indentured servants. We are told we are free, but we are enslaved through taxes, all kinds of taxes, not just the unconstitutional income tax in America, which they promised would only be 1% ever. But they lied to us in 1916. But all sorts of taxes. And through the kind of hidden invisible tax called inflation, when money or the substitute for money is created out of thin air with interest attached to this debt currency. Currency, that's something that moves. That's part of maritime language, which most people don't understand. So the worldview that we are taught in schools, in the churches, even though these are different and opposing in some aspects, in other words, creationism versus atheism, and we're told it's either this or it's this, and given these pretended, absolutes, which are not necessarily the case. Many of the arguments that we see or presentations made in apologetics and so forth start with a lie that is built into a question in the first place. As if this, in other words, like Three Mormons or Saints of Scripture, one of their video titles might be something like, "Why does our Heavenly Father love us so much?" Okay? So that's manipulation. That's mental manipulation right there. Because they're saying, they're saying, here's the question. The question is, why does he love us so much? So the assumption is that A, we do have a Heavenly Father, that the Israelite God and all this Mormon theology is true, and that he does love us. And that if you look at the way the world is run, that would be a logical conclusion. That's what that's assuming. And of course, all of that is horseshit. So they build in lies into an argument in the beginning. And so we have these two camps that are used in in a technique called the Hegelian dialectic, talking about, and maybe it's even falsely attributed to Hegel, but where you have two sides pitted against each other, created, in other words, the problem, create a problem and introduce a solution. Problem, the reaction to that problem, and then you introduce a solution. In other words, you treat women like shit all these years, and queers and that sort of a thing, and so they are upset, and then you introduce a solution, which is part of your agenda, like gay marriage and transgendering and all sorts of this sort of thing, which will reduce population growth because queers can't reproduce, they can adopt, which is what that gal was getting at when she was the other day that I got out of her case, because she's basically putting out this agenda stuff, saying, look, the gays are our solution to populate, we're overpopulated. Well, this is part of an agenda of the elitists. It's part of the population or the depopulation goals, which also include a lot of genocide, which is what's going on right now in various places in the world, and most notably, in the Middle East. And the more things change, the more things continue, the more they stay the same. Watch too many Gillette commercials, right? The Gillette family is one of these elite families, by the way, or Proctor family, Gamble family, If you look, if you read anything about, certain families, what Fritz Springmeier had to say about, Illuminati bloodlines, 13 bloodlines, and so forth, and then, of course, the family is spread out in terms of names. And the witchcraft, Satanism. I've related how I was, watching Dark Shadows as a small child. So that was spotlighting, one of those very powerful families, the Collins family, that was discussing, stuff going on and portraying things, in Salem, Massachusetts. Yeah, town of witches. So, there is so much knowledge that is suppressed, hidden, sort of occult, from the people who are enslaved by these systems and told they are free, and then told it is your patriotic duty to this God-formed nation to go out and kill people across the world who are like the Gadianton robbers, we are told by Gordon B. Hinckley, when they had nothing to do with whatever they were being associated with, like the Three Towers coming down in New York. And Gordon B. Hinckley portrayed the Iraqi people, especially Iraqis and Afghan people, basically, as having been like unto the Gadianton robbers and their secret combinations in the Book of Mormon fable, who are most wicked and need to be wiped out. Even though the Book of Mormon, the leader Gidgiddoni was a righteous prophet, not president of the church, but he was like the head of the army, governor, or that kind of thing. The Nephites in the story always had these righteous, inspired men as leaders, as long as the people were doing pretty good. And he said, if we actually go and attack these people in a preemptive war like George Bush and Dick Cheney were doing, and Gordon B. Hinckley endorsed by saying we need to follow our leaders because they know so much more than we do, and they have all this wisdom, that we would be delivered by the God of Israel into the hand of the Gadiantons, I said to the Nephites. So Gordon B. Hinckley was contradicting, teaching straight out of the Book of Mormon by telling people to go, that there was their military duty to go follow these wicked men like Dick Cheney. And George Bush is just a puppet. He's mind friend, and Cheney's a super wicked man. I guess I have less of a hatred for George Bush. His father, I hated. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I've visited with George Bush in dreams. I don't know why. So I'm just saying it was a dream, but I just, he's a mind control victim. He's a victim of TBMC. It's a trauma-based mind control, right? You can look at it and see that. You can listen to him and notice it. You can see that really naive. And you can see that because he did way too much blow. But look, he did a lot of blow. And the guy's very smart. He's brilliant. And much better words are than GW. GW has sounded better more recently, isn't it? How's that happen, right? Was he being, who knows what was happening? But anyway, bottom line is, Hinckley associated these people with the Ghanaians when they did nothing to the American people. They had nothing to do with the Twin Towers coming down. Even in the official Washington official story, the Iraqis had nothing to do with it, and Hinckley was endorsing mass murder in the Middle East because he's an Amalekite upon the tower. In the Book of Mormon vernacular, in the Book of Mormon, we had the Lamanites always going to war with the Nephites, the evil dark-skinned Lamanites whose skin is cursed so that the Nephites wouldn't interbreed with these savage sinners going to war with the Nephites, and the people said, hey, we always get our butts kicked. Why are we doing this? Then they hired these Amalekites, who are people who used to be Nephites, and were apostates like me, who are hardened against the Spirit of the Lord, we are taught. This is such mind control. In other words, if you have once had the light of the gospel in your life, okay, and then you leave, you disobey your leaders, then you will lose the light which you had. You will be worse than if you had never had the gospel. That's the teaching we have in Mormonism. And right there in the Book of Mormon, so these Amalekites were the most evil, hardened, satanic people ever. And so they hired them for, for the 2,000 years ago, the pre-Christian era, whatever, and post, slightly, right? Post-Christian. In other words, 2,000 years ago, these guys were CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. And Gordon B. Hinckley, and Jerry Falwell, and Oral Roberts, and Robert Schuller, all these guys. These are the Amalekites on the towers. These are the guys that talk shit from the towers or the televisions or the pulpits until the minds of the people are conditioned, and then the Lamanites would get fired up and go to war against the Nephites. Because they had these Amalekites on the tower, and Gordon B. Hinckley is an Amalekite on the tower. The Book of Mormon teaches valuable lessons in mind control. If you understand what's being done, there are lessons in the occult. There are lessons. There are Luciferian doctrines. There's plenty of Christian doctrine being, especially 19th century stuff, being discussed. Anachronistically. And it's revealing. Just because these Nephites never existed doesn't mean the Book of Mormon doesn't have, it has stuff, it has techniques in there, it has methodologies for mind control being revealed, being demonstrated in stuff, just like what I'm saying. The Amalekites on the towers. That's your those are your Fox News guys. Those are your warmongers. Those are your Christian and Mormon priesthood or preachers who are telling you God wants you to be loyal to your country. It's right there in the New Testament. Be loyal to your leaders. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. In other words, fund these wars by paying the taxes that are demanded. God wants you to do it. That way we can afford to go bomb the shit out of these people that had nothing to do with what they're being blamed for doing by your Christian and Mormon leaders and your media hounds. Because wars are profitable. They're profitable for the international, for the federal, for the Fed banks, for the central banks of countries whose people are convinced through the media that they need to go to war. Because money is created out of nothing, and they don't even have to print it anymore. It's going to be a digit. And then there's a debt. And so that debt is securitized and sold as treasury securities. Now the money instantly goes, so you've got investment in debt, which in many cases are international banks and like Chinese banks and so forth, especially by a tremendous amount of American debt, mortgage debt and government securities, with interest attached to it. And so we have a national debt because we have a budget that constantly incurs debt with debt-based monetary system, which can never be repaid by creating more debt-based money. And the money goes to these defense industry companies like McDonnell Douglas, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Lockheed and Martin Marietta, I think, Raytheon, Boeing, etc., 3M, on and on, DuPont. And who invests in these companies? Well, maybe you do, but guess who else does? Maybe the city of Salt Lake does. The municipal corporation of Salt Lake City may invest in those companies. Or the state of Florida, or the county of whatever, Orlando, or the city of Los Angeles, or CalPERS or CalSTRS, pension funds. I mean, so you've got a conflict of interest. You've got a conflict of interest because your government is invested in companies that profit from war. And your government is privately owned. They're invested in video game companies, which they're supposed to regulate, and in pharmaceutical companies, which they're supposed to regulate. Are there shares in the FBI? Who owns the Mormon Church? I mean, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There's so many Mormon churches, but it's the biggest. Who owns it? Because who, other than majority shareholders are, control the board of directors and thereby create what we call the Word of God. And Russell Nelson doesn't have mythological Jesus, the Tooth Fairy, or Santa Claus whispering into his ear. He's got the will of the majority shareholders, possibly from various international banking and other financial interests. I mean, the LDS Church was, first you got Brigham Young backed by Kuhn Blow, at least I've read that. I haven't read all the details. Meeting with, Jesuits, or at least Pierre, what the hell was his name? Which basically, I believe, controls Freemasonry as well. You've got Heber J. Grant, I believe it was, borrowing from Union Bank of New York, which was predominantly Rockefeller controlled. Even mortgaging, I believe, the temple properties, various church properties, in order to get money to invest in ventures such as, Utah Sugar and Beet Company, maybe other power companies. When you look at the companies that the church is invested in, it's insane. When you see like the Temple Lot case where the LDS Church is fighting against the reorganized church to control the Temple Lot in Independence, Missouri, and Joseph F. Smith, I believe, is being questioned, on the stand. Oh, what other companies are you, president of or director of? Oh, I don't know. I just made a couple of minor ones. Oh, do you call these minor? Utah Sugar and Beet, Utah, Power, Union Pacific Railroad. I mean, on and on and on. And you're like, are you kidding me? The LDS Church is in charge of that? How does this guy have a chance to be listening to the God of Israel when he's like a director or CEO, president, chairman of all these huge financial interests, these enormous companies, energy companies, food, cattle, all this stuff. The LDS Church is not what you are told in church, people. Everything is privately owned. Everything is commerce. What you think is public is still a form of private ownership that is hidden from you. That's why you don't own your home. You don't own the property it's on. You're a tenant. If you read the deed, you're a tenant. You're a tenant. You're a tenant. You don't own it. You don't own it in allodium. That's why it's called real estate. It's real property held in estate. You have a certain and limited and defined degree of control over this. You don't have the type of ownership that you might imagine that you do. And it can be taken from you if you don't pay what's called taxes on it, which is rent, really. Yeah. The more you investigate the private ownership of these things, the more you find out, wait a minute, this isn't all of what I've been told. Mormon cosmology or the view of what we call the universe, astronomy, etc., all these sort of things that are taught from the atheist viewpoint as well, aren't necessarily true. Things aren't the way that you've been told, and you've been told things for specific reasons, and I don't even know all of those reasons. But I do know that we are told to obey our leaders. Obedience is the first law of heaven. Mormons are taught mainstreamism. They are taught obey your public officials. Be a good citizen. It's what God wants. Go to public school. Have babies at hospitals. Take every vaccination that they tell you to on television. Go to a doctor, a medical doctor who's been trained for the ministry in the approved manner, in a system controlled by elitists, where the Rockefeller family is heavily involved. Lawrence Rockefeller had so much to do with that, and the AMA, the American Medical Association, and the investment that is had, pharmaceutical companies. The cross investment is just crazy in these companies. And so we have physicians whose education is determined in large part by interests that are profiting in the pharmaceutical industry. So in other words, these guys basically are trained to be drug pushers. They're not what we call health care. It's not health care. It's not health care. It's profitable for the pharmaceutical companies, the medical industry, and those that invest wisely in these industries. Cancer research is guided and suppressed. Maybe that's what my uncle is dead. Maybe he did commit suicide, maybe he didn't. He was in the who's who, cancer research. Lay a trail, that's illegal. Things that work become illegal many times. They want what's profitable, and they want you to be diseased. They want you to die before you collect a lot of the Social Security that you pay into. And your church leaders tell you to obey. Go to war when the leaders of your country say so, because God wants you to be patriotic. It's His nation. These are wise and inspired, unless they're Democrats. Then go anyway. God will bless you. When Gordon B. Hinckley was doing that War and Peace talk, and he mentioned that boy in Afghanistan, that boy who joined, the military, and he was telling his mom, "Well, Mom, if I die over here in Afghanistan, it'll be worth it because I'm protecting your freedom. He wasn't protecting its freedom. What's going on in Afghanistan has limited the Taliban's ability to limit the CIA-directed heroin or portion of it. Anything going to the West, Western Europe as well. Heroin addiction has proliferated since we got into Afghanistan and stopped the Taliban from interfering with the opium crop. I think that's, yeah, so do your research. People were being murdered there by the thousands, and they still are. And your Israelite God loves it because he's a God of murder if you read the Old Testament. But you're conditioned to obey these people, take your vaccines that make you sick, compromise your immune system, go get programmed, government schools, go to church, get programmed by your church leaders so that you'll be obedient to the masters, and your church leaders and the curriculum and the religions deify the offices of government that serve the elite. The privately held plantations called municipal corporations here. The monarchies are much more powerful than they lead you to believe. Monarchies have always been deified by the religions of the state. The myth of separation of church and state is truly a myth. We've been duped. We're being duped in Mormonism, in Scientology, Christianity, and in Seventh-day Adventism, and in the Watchtower, and all of these religions. And the World Organization that basically the owner of the Moonies, is focused on is bringing these religions together. And we see the churches gathering at Vatican conferences and the LDS leaders bowing to the Pope and kissing his ring in the temple in Rome, and being all about Jesus Christ now, as everyone's these churches like the LDS Church and the Community of Christ are morphing into something that can be blended together in a world religion under the Roman God, Jesus Christ. A man that never lived, who was not an historical character, and who endorsed the Old Testament God of war God, Yahweh, and in whose name we've had the Crusades, the Inquisitions, the burning, drowning and burning of mostly women, accused of witchcraft because it's a competition. It's a religion, or it's a practice of competition with bowing to the Christian religion. Freedom of religion is preached when they want more power for the Christian churches. But when Abrahamic religions have control, there is no freedom. Just like there was no freedom in Utah when Brigham Young was the dictator there. The king, basically, the prophet, priest, and king, the governor, the head of the Indian Affairs Bureau, whatever, agent, and head of the Mormon Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. These are all control mechanisms which get you to obey more easily, believing you're free and you're better than others who don't follow your religion. The most racist position to have is that of being a follower of the God of the Old Testament, who hated all races except the Jews, and had them murder people of other ethnicities, other nations, and other religions, and they justify it because they didn't worship him. And if you were part of them and you didn't follow his narcissistic edicts for Sabbath day worship and abstinence from the most minor forms of work, even necessary to take care of your family many times, at least in the stories, many of which are just BS, then a group activity was had to kill you, to stone you as a group activity, to teach others in cult mind control, classic style that you better obey. Whether they're killing you or whether they're shaming you, pressure is applied to obey. This is part of the reign of terror. Brigham Young had a reign of terror. What we call the Mormon Reformation. That's not a common term in LDS circles, but historically, that is a term that you can see used. All of these organizations they're profitable, they're harmful to the people that are called members to make them feel special. Victims and fools is more accurate. You're not an owner like you are in a membership of something that you own a share in. When Ryan McKnight said these people, the members of the church, are stakeholders. And I took exception to that because I felt that it implied, it may cause people to think that they actually have some sort of equity and actual say. They don't have any say. Now, a stakeholder, by definition, as he pointed out, doesn't necessarily have to be a shareholder. It can be a community that's affected, so they have a stake in the way things go. But that doesn't mean you exercise control. And so using the term stakeholder in this manner, or calling people members, causes you to feel like, I'm part of this. I pay into this. I should have a say. Except for everything comes down from the top in Mormonism, and so you're told it's coming from the deity, but actually it's coming by it's the financially based. It's who owns this privately owned church. So coming full circle on that investment with the Union Bank of New York loaned money to the LDS Church, so that when Heber J. Grant gambled the church properties in order to finance development of certain economic business interests for the church, the LDS Empire, Jesus forgot to tell him that there was going to be a bit of a recession, some economic issues, and they got in trouble, and I believe they were in default on that loan. And so what happened? The shares of LDS Inc., as I'm calling it, corporate shares of LDS Investments, or of the Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, were they transferred to Union Bank of New York, possibly? Hey. Some entities own that. The church is owned through stock, and it is controlled through stock, not from some deity. And you people who are members are being manipulated in all the belief systems, the purity doctrines, all these things that say, and what is the purity doctrine? And what is the worthiness doctrine? You've got to obey so much. You've got to be super obedient to whatever it is. You don't have sex outside of your authorized marriage by the state, who also licenses the preachers, as far as civil authority for marriage in this chattel property system that you're in. Otherwise, it's not holy. It's not sanctified by God. What God? The Israelite God. It's not your relationship isn't sanctified unless it's legal. And so in the temples, you put covenant to have no sexual relations. It used to be no sexual intercourse. I don't know what it was before that. With anyone except to your spouse, to whom you are both legally and lawfully wedded. Both legally and lawfully. What's the difference? Good question. Maybe Black's Law. That makes it special. Why? Because the state is being deified in this. That's why. And so, if you don't, the more obedient you are to you, without questioning your leaders, the more obedient you are, the more holy you are, the more you obey, do 100% home teaching. Now, you don't even have to do home teaching. The church is being made more palatable because so many people are leaving. That's
part of what's going on. The more you obey your leaders and serve in the ways you are asked, the holier you are, the more worthy you are to receive inspiration from the God of Israel to guide you in your path, to be saved and exalted in the kingdom of God, worlds without end, with your loved ones. And if you're not 100% obedient, like the 2,000 stripling warriors of Helaman in the Book of Mormon, then you might not be blessed out of it. The lesson there was other Nephite soldiers were reasonably righteous, were dying in the war, but the stripling warriors obeyed with exactness their leader and the commandments of their God, so God didn't let any of them be killed. This is mind control. This is indoctrination that affects the way you behave. It conditions you to believe you must obey, you must not even think. It's just Satan trying to lead you astray down to hell. When you listen to someone like, that's what you are taught through the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is a masterful work of mind control. You hear people quote maybe Mark Twain. You know, it's chloroform in print. You know, people say, oh, it's crap literature. Well, it's masterful and it's effective. Even though it's in many ways not Mormonism in practice of LDS doctrine, kingdoms of glory, degrees of Masonic degrees of glory, and eternal marriage, polygamy, baptism for the dead. That's not in the Book of Mormon, but mind control is demonstrated effectively in the Book of Mormon. It's a course of mind control. It's a manual to indoctrinate and subjugate. And it wasn't written by Joseph Smith. It was written by people that understood those principles, created that foundation document, which is not only the chief marketing piece, but it is mind control in practice. So that those who lead these secretive societies, those with the real wealth, those that own stock, serious amounts of stock in churches, in municipal corporations, and in other financial and industrial concerns and pharmaceutical, live comfortable lives at the expense of the people who toil to make a mortgage payment and a car payment, and then have to pay the LDS Church and others like it tithing or donations, waste their time indoctrinating one another in bullshit, telling one another that if they obey, they will live forever. Even though they die, they'll be resurrected, and everything will just be dandy. It's part of a system. The LDS Church is very involved in recruiting people for these so-called intelligence and in their profiteering. It's part of the network where human trafficking, kiddie porn, and sexual slavery took place, and human sacrifice, which when I did that SRA video and it went over the Glenn Pace, Bishop of the church, presiding bishop, remember Glenn Pace, internal memo, the NSA styled Strengthening Church Members Committee, which discussed massive amounts of Satanism within the LDS Church, presumably undetected, with the superpowers of discernment that the priesthood leaders are supposed to have. But in fact, priesthood leaders, young women's and young men's leaders, bishops, stake patriarchs, stake president, others, members of the tabernacle choir, were all involved in human sacrifice and subjecting these people to participating in it or to watching it. These were all temple recommend holders who, of course, have a temple recommend according to LDS doctrine because the discernment of the leaders interview them would allow them to see a sketch book. But in fact, we have generational Satanism running the LDS church. We have corporate governments in charge of the LDS church. We have members of secret societies. We have a whole history of people involved in the most heinous crimes imaginable leading the LDS church. Can I show the blood on Russell Nelson's hands and Thomas Watson's? Probably. There are people that have witnessed it. Even now, Russell Nelson is avoiding testifying in the case against his son-in-law and daughter for the horrific things happening about him. But some say we're underneath his tutelage or leadership in the abuse and molestation that was going on there previously. And now they try to use these apologetic techniques. Oh, it's the satanic panic. These things have been, proven not to be. Nobody proved that, these things didn't happen. But there are agents, there are occultists in positions of power, the judicial system, the police. Every member, every pivotal position of power and influence because they self-promote and there's ownership. And it actually is very manageable. It's not something that's too difficult to manage. As you were told, sometimes by apologists say it's just impossible. It is. The secret society network. And there's blood on these people's hands. Dallin Oaks, David Bednar, Russell Nelson. These are evil people. And you have masters in some of them. They're masters of NLP. Dieter Uchtdorf is a master of NLP. The way that they get you to believe this stuff, it's not accidental. I'm going to went to bed at the management school in Switzerland as an executive before Jesus decided he needed to be impossible. Yeah. That management school in Switzerland, Schwester, Sisters of Isis land. It was like a who's who of billboards. Is that where you learned to be so good with NLP? Where did Gordy learn it? Where did Holland learn it? Where did these guys learn neuro-linguistic programming techniques to hypnotic language? Where did Trump learn his hypnotic language techniques? Some people are better. Where do these people learn how to be master manipulators? Getting you to believe, trust them. Where do they learn this stuff? When you recognize neuro-linguistic programming technique, hypnotic language sales techniques, when you turn around, when you recognize those things being used by religious and political leaders, you have to ask yourself some questions like I did one day when I walked into church and said, why does Jesus use control here? Why did they use hypnotic repetition in these songs and a drone melody that induces a semi-hypnotic state wherein these children are repeating suggestions to their mind that they can follow the prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet. He knows the way. In other words, follow the prophet repeated 3 times with different attachments maybe. He knows the way, or don't go astray, etc., etc. Just like, oh God, hear the words of my mouth, repeated 3 times. There are reasons why Donald Trump repeats himself. There are reasons why Gordon B. Hinckley used hypnotic cadence and rhythm his Warren speech when he started to talk about, oh, we believe in the Savior, Jesus Christ. And he changed the tempo completely for reasons. These guys know what they're doing. But when they fake emotion, when they're lying about something and they know it and then they pretend to be moved by the Spirit, they're using NLP. People get sold things all the time and feel that they connect with people because they trust them because the people understand NLP. They're master practitioners, and these guys are. When you can recognize that, you're gonna have to ask yourself some questions. Okay. So we've got leaders in all sorts of areas who I say are Luciferians and who understand the manipulation of the human mind and emotions in privately owned churches and governments and businesses, wherein we are lied to about the private nature of those that are called government. And it is certainly ignored with regard to the churches because it doesn't go with the view that we are having placed in our minds and over repeated. They tell you, oh, you need to go to church. Oh, it just keeps you like a coal warm in the fire. No, it does. It's because repetitious programming is effective. Especially when if you don't think about how little sense this shit makes, and you don't have time, when your resources of time are being taken, it's more difficult to study your way out of these cults. And the additional slavery that they put upon you, and the augmenting of the system of slavery and mass genocide that we have in this and other countries. In the Rothschild banking system. All right. I think I'll. What do we do now? I'm going to end with what I previously recorded here, which I find interesting. Yeah. Okay. So how do I get to that? Let's see. Oh gosh, I didn't even go through the rest of the pictures, but we did it earlier. Okay. So how do I do this? How do I get the volume? I'm going to need a little bit of volume, so I can move this bad boy over here. I'm going to plug it into the stereo system here in the car. If I can do that just briefly, let me pause this and finish up. Okay, so I recorded this earlier. Let's call this a little more like whatever. Adult content may not be suitable for younger viewers, depending on your view of what you want to expose your children to. Okay. See if we can make this happen now. Go here. And go to, was it Mobazin? It was. All right. Okay, people, so this has gone as planned. This little clip.
Here's what I found on the web.
Say what? Google Assistant just never lets up. Okay, so if this has gone as planned, this little clip I'm doing right now will be put in at the end. And no, you're not going to have to watch me eat this entire Chobani. Did I pronounce that right, Greek people? Greek coconut cream yogurt. But I'm going to make an important point. So I'm going to put it on pause and get back to you shortly. This is going to be good. Meaning the yogurt is going to be good. And it was. Without the editing, you get a little extra. You got to see what this stuff is. Oh, yeah. Alright, pausing it. Okay, so you know how hypocritical I would feel and how
how against hypocrisy I am in the church. So how hypocritical I would feel if I ate this whole yogurt in front of all you loyal viewers who have endured this long before I put this in here. I'd be hypocritical because I think I gave some crap to Travis Wayne Goodsell, whose channel I really like. He puts out a lot of good information. I haven't watched it in a little bit, but it's probably because Google's probably trying to make it. I'm not getting his notifications. Does that happen to you people? Travis, you can't eat tater tots at 3 in the morning on your video. At least not the whole bowl of them. Maybe one. You can't have people watching that stuff. Dodger Girl probably quit watching your channel after that. Anyway, but I recommend Travis Wynn Goodsell puts out some good stuff. Emerging Photon, good stuff. And Madeline on her channel. God, am I having a brain freeze here? Galactic Storyteller. You know, we interviewed each other. She's super smart. Actually, all these people are very smart. Very smart people who have done great research, and their channels, like mine, get suppressed by Google, by YouTube. YouTube's owned by Google. Heard rumors about some Mormons sitting on a board there. Don't know if it's true, but, you know, they're interconnected through the network that I most likely was talking about before I edit this in. So the other day when I was on Facebook, and I didn't put this in the video when I was thinking of doing it, on the video that didn't get edited and was pretty horrible, sort of, was doing horribly. Yeah, like my last video. Maybe Dodger Girl didn't think it was horrible, but she's very supportive. Anyhow, yeah, so I was reading some FB posts. They tend to be, you know, things like from apostates of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like that one from Tom Miller was, or just a lot of ex-Mormons or, you know, people that are disgruntled with the dishonesty of the LDS Church and the mind control, the abuse of the mind control and the culture upon members of the church called the saints. The abuse of the saints by this mind control that I presumably have been talking about during the video that I haven't yet done as I go down the ramble on. And so I saw a post from a girl that was, you know, saying how some men, Mormon men probably, think that the world was a better place when Mormon women listened more to what they were supposed to do, which was, you know, shut up, cook, clean, have sex when they're told to, be quiet when they're told to, just be a second-class citizen, and they're solely there basically for the comfort and enjoyment of their husband.
And help meet unto Adam.
Words, their master, because they're essentially being treated like you know, slaves, right? Which of course is endorsed in the New Testament by the character called Paul, you know, emphatically, and he's taking on the Jewish tradition of women being second-class citizens that we find through our always misogynistic Bible, the Jewish scriptures, and then the Roman scriptures as well. Okay, so yeah. And so I thought, you know, I almost commented on that because I'm a big supporter of making things better for the girls, because we've been trained to treat girls very poorly in all of the Abrahamic religions. Mormonism tries to pretend like, oh, we put the women on a pedestal. So Jesus has been changing his mind. We've talked about that, right? You know, in the temple, first the women had to say they obey their husband. That was pretty much in the temple prep classes. My first fight walked out of those. Like the second time we were going through that. When they're getting into the Ephesians chapter 5 stuff, right? So, yeah. We've been trained through our scriptures that women are to be subservient And, the man is to rule. And although I tried to work as a team, there was no team in my first marriage. That was a real confirmation of the Book of Mormon probably being true at that point when Lehi said that it must needs be that there's opposition in all things. My first wife was indeed opposition in all things. Granted, I was Mormon and trying to raise children, to be honest, true, chaste, benevolent, not get high, drunk, and all that kind of stuff, right? Keep them, so they wouldn't lose their virtue and go to hell. Maybe they could repent, but they'd be a licked cupcake. And then they feel like shit, they might be suicidal or turn into alcoholics, so, anyway, then Christy Johnson, I put up one that said, if everyone had to wear a warning label, what would your warning label be? So I was thinking of this other one and thinking of, how I've tried to live my life. And then as I became more aware of how screwed up the behavioral control system is within the scriptures and exercised within all these Abrahamic religions, probably worst with Muslims and in Mormonism especially, older Mormonism. Now the women don't have to say they obey their husbands. In the temple, first it was they obey, then it got changed to, well, we'll obey as long as you guys are following the Lord, so that kind of gave it weasel clause, putting Robert Allen nothing down language. And then, altogether, it's gone. Women are human beings now. Pretty soon they might be on par with Negro men and get the priesthood. But, all men, but of course, Negro men were on, and women were barred from the priesthood. Blacks have now got the privilege of pretending to have special powers from the misogynistic, racist piece of shit Israelite God who's endorsed, genocide, mass murder, caused it, admittedly committed it, endorsed slavery, rape, and human sacrifice, or at least seemed to approve of Moses' human offerings. Numbers 31, right? So anyway, this is what I had in mind, and so I was thinking, what can I say here when Christy said, what would your warning label be? Because I've tried to do dishes, and the reason we're having this issue, by the way, is because, this is the way I'm going to do it when I start the other video, I guess, because I'm using Mobazan, and I'm not going to have the face cam thing on all the time because it takes like a 3 gigabyte video, maybe 5 if I ramble long enough in this thing. So it's going to be screenshots, but why am I telling you? You already know that because this is going to be at the end. All right, so I thought, what can I say? What can I say? And I said, and here's what I said. And then I sent a message to Dodger Girl. I did amend it a little bit. I didn't take away this stuff. I just kind of added some more because, I just... God, shut up, Dodger. Shut up, Dave. Here's what I said my warning label would be if everybody had to wear a warning label. It is kind of a little bit self-promoting. But it's true. It's true. All right, let's make sure this doesn't fade. Warning. Known to do dishes, laundry, and cause potentially habit-forming seizure level. Mom, don't watch. Seizure level climaxes. In addition to starting shit on YouTube and Facebook by outing elites who govern secret societies and all the Abrahamic religions. And with that, I'm just going to emphasize the importance of doing dishes well. I live on the road. You can see the mess. Yeah, I had to bring so much stuff because I didn't know how far east I was going to go and how long I was going to go. I'm not this much of a slob necessarily normally, but I'm kind of ADD when I lose shit. I'm just digging and just throwing shit everywhere. It looks like a laundry pile that got hit by a tornado. But,
you know, that whole comment was geared at, you know, trying to make life better for your spouse, your girlfriend, your partner, a partner, not a fucking, you know, indentured servant, right? It's not woman's work to do the dishes, to do laundry, to help. My second wife usually redid portions of whatever I did because she was probably still is super OCD and a perfectionist. Sit down your glass of water and she's like scrubbing it with a Brimble pad. You turn around. Hey, she kept a clean house. She's the hardest worker I've ever seen in my life. I'm not talking trash. I'm just saying it was a swing of the pendulum from the first wife. Like vacuum her couch once a year. She spent most of her time on worshiping Colonel Sanders, devouring chicken so that the kids learned colorful trays. Okay, big difference. So, anyway, gonna do dishes, do them right. I live on the road. Sometimes, like with these kind of things with these spoons, you know, you just gotta really gotta do it right. So there's a little groove there. Gotta just, yeah. They gotta be thorough. You gotta do it right. You gotta care about your girl, your wife. Make everything good for her. Not just you. You got that? I'm not gonna put it Shabani. It's good shit. Remember to like, subscribe, treat people right. Especially those whom you're supposed to care about the most. Okay, people, so if this has gone as planned, this little clip.
Here's what I found on the web.
Say comfort and enjoyment as children. Okay, people, so if this has gone...
Turn the fuck off! Nice. Am I out or what, huh? Let's end this right. Let's end it better than that. Let's end it better than that. Nah. I can't do that. I get copyrighted if I use that one. I have to use Black Sabbath. I'm out. Yeah, so remember to friend me on Facebook as Dodger Dave there, okay? That way it can facilitate, you know, more communication in a centralized place, because the videos, only I see what everybody else is saying. So I think that could be helpful. In the meantime, how about this? Yeah, let's end with this. Remember this video? Remember this one? Contribute! Support! Choose the real right.